Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wisdom Seeker Live podcast, first episode of 2023, and the also celebration of 2 years with the podcast. And look forward to a good day today as we talk about looking backwards and living forward. As always, we like to start the podcast off talking about how we see wisdom, and we see wisdom as a journey. It is a journey that is basically three steps or three parts. First is to gain knowledge. We gain knowledge formally, informally, hopefully. We're getting new knowledge each day, and especially in our current world, there's knowledge abounds, so there's plenty to be found. Second step in this journey or process is to gain understanding. Understanding is when we take our knowledge and we apply it in our lives and use it hopefully to be productive, to make good choices, to accomplish good things. Third step in this process, and the most important, is when we begin to see our knowledge and understanding and use it from a much larger perspective, a perspective outside of ourselves, beyond our immediate needs, surroundings, recognizing that we are not alone and that what we say and do affects other people. That larger perspective is when we begin to actually gain wisdom in our life. And it is important that we get to that point, because once we get to a point of wisdom, we can make wise choices, better choices that will benefit not only us, but those around us, our family, our friends, colleagues, and so on. So I hope that you'll join us on a wisdom journey with the idea of gaining new wisdom in our lives so that we can be prepared to look backward, but to live forward. So I appreciate everyone here. If you would, please let me know your name and where you're joining from. It's always good to have everyone here participating. And welcome, Mubiru. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. If not, let me know and I will correct myself if you'll share with me proper way. And appreciate you being here from Uganda. And part of what I want us to do is just consider what we've covered in the podcast over the past 2 years, because taking out a few times that we've not actually had the podcast, we're at in the neighborhood of 100 episodes. And by the way, if you want to see past episodes, if you go to my profile, you can look at activity and scroll and find previous episodes of Wisdom Seeker there to review and all. But we have covered many topics, including education. We've talked about patience. We've dealt with some tough topics such as religion in the workplace. And we've discussed many things, gained lots of wisdom. And by the way, part of the value of your being here is to share your wisdom because we've all gained some wisdom. We have to actually try very hard not to gain some wisdom along the way. My hope, though, is that you will become a wisdom seeker so that not only are you stumbling into wisdom, but you are actively gaining wisdom on a regular basis. And I also wanted to introduce a new hashtag that has just been something the last few months has been rolling around in my mind, and been really trying to understand and seek wisdom on it. And the hashtag is hashtag Godspeed in 2023. And a little background, the phrase Godspeed for me has been something that I like to share, to wish someone the best as they move forward doing whatever. And it's a kind of an alternative in my mind, and different people have different views, but in my mind, it's an alternative to good luck. I appreciate the spirit of offering good luck, but I don't believe, for me, and I've got a number of people that tend to agree, that luck is not a thing, that we aren't just kind of here scrambling around hoping for the best, that there is design and order to what's going on. And so anyway, Godspeed was recently part of a topic at church for me. And our pastor made an interesting comment, one that I hadn't considered and thought about in terms of Godspeed, is that Godspeed is not necessarily the speed that we would think it would be. We assume that the fastest possible way, most direct route, is the best way. And I'm not sure that it's necessarily the wise way. And that's gotten me to thinking. We talk about goals and we talk about plans and moving forward. And this time of year, we talk about New Year's resolutions and turning over a new leaf, changing in our lives. And so we talk about what we want to do, how we want to do it, when we want to do it, but we never consider the pace at which we're going to do it. In other words, what is the speed with which we do things? And I know that in our cultures and in our desire to get to a new point, we set a speed that we think of as a very quick speed. But I think we, in doing so, miss some opportunity. I think we miss wisdom. And I even think back to an episode that we talked about wisdom in terms of a number of us like and believe in prayer. And we really like to get clear answers to our prayers. And we do, and we can see those answers. But one answer that we struggle with is when we don't get yes or no, but we get an answer of wait. And so I think the fact that we get the answer of wait many times indicates maybe that our thinking of our speed in moving forward in life may not be the best or wisest approach from a speed standpoint, from a pace standpoint. And for me, for this year, I'm really going to focus in on God's speed in 2023, in the hopes that not only will I find wise direction in what I do and who I am and how I relate to others, but not just the direction, but also the pace or timing of that direction. Because part of the challenge, and this is something that Anton and I talk about on Tuesday mornings, is dealing with stress and dealing with anxiety. And the pace at which things occur can very much affect our level of stress and anxiety. Because what happens is we make a decision, we even set goals that we're going to get a goal accomplished in a month. And nothing wrong with goal setting. In fact, we're going to be probably talking about that tomorrow on the Human SOS show. But goal setting is great. Setting times as part of goal setting is important. But remembering that we may not be as able to control the pace or the timings and outcomes of these goals. So, really want us to consider the wisdom in Godspeed. I know some of the things that I'm passionate about that I get antsy to see answers to and change occur in is in education. Real concern for me is that our education systems, and it's worldwide, are broken and we have a problem. And I would like to see the change happen quickly, even tomorrow. And I've come to realize that that may not be the wisest approach, the wisest speed, if you will, in things occurring. Welcome, Dr. Julian. Glad to have you here. Look forward to any comments, questions you might have. So, Godspeed in 2023. And looking backwards, we need to learn from the past. Very important. And I hope that with close to 100 episodes of the Wisdom Seeker podcast that we've all gained some wisdom along the way, and looking back and considering that wisdom is valuable because it gives us a foundation to go forward and to grow forward and to learn and make better decisions as we move forward. But the problem that we encounter is that we get stuck looking backwards, and that's not where we need to be. We look backwards to learn, not to stay there, but to have a place and a basis for moving forward. And that is what I hope that we can really focus in on this year, that we will seek to move forward, but do so wisely and do so at God's speed this year, and find out what that speed is in our lives. Sometimes things will happen very quickly, and we will need to be prepared for that. I believe, though, that most times things occur gradually, and there's health in that case of things changing gradually, because when we change gradual, it usually means that it will stay and last for a long time. Welcome, Rick. Glad to have you. Running late's not a problem. We don't check your check you at the door. Thanks for being here. So, looking backwards and living forwards. Again, topics that we have covered that hopefully we have gained wisdom in is related to priority of wisdom seeking and how we seek wisdom. Our first episode, for any of you that might have happened to be there 2 years ago, I introduced the concept of what I call the 40-day challenge. 40 days because it's significant in that 40 days represents struggle and growth and change. And that 40-day challenge, we talked about a 3-step process and to help us seek and find wisdom. And that 3-step process was disconnecting from noise, distraction, whatever that looks like in our lives. For many of us, by the way, that distraction is media, okay, whether it be news media, whether it be other types of media, including social media, that we need to be purposeful in times of disconnecting from some of that, and in some cases, permanently disconnecting from some of it. And then after we disconnect, that gives us additional time for other priorities. And the secondary step in this process is to take that time and use it to observe. Many of us are going through life on autopilot. And if you don't believe it, ask yourself at the end of the day, what things, what people you have encountered. And beyond just being able to name a name or to give a street name, what was there? Who was there? What were they doing? And many of us will find we don't remember. We don't know because we're so caught up in being on autopilot. So we first start by disconnecting from those distractions, whatever they are in our life. Second step is to make a choice to observe what is going on around us. And then the last step is seeking wisdom in regards to whatever we observe. And that means we see something in our world, our life, our family, our work, and we begin to think and look at those things outside of ourselves, beyond what it means just to us. How does my decision, my choices how do they affect other people as well? Because it's not just affecting us. It's affecting loved ones, family, friends, colleagues. And can we see these situations from a bigger perspective and therefore make wiser choices? So that's kind of looking at part of the past of the Wisdom Seeker Live podcast. In fact, when we first started, I don't even remember what the official name of the podcast at that point, because it was just a beginning. For me, it was a brand new journey in something I had never done. For those that don't know me again, don't know some of my history, I am generally not a front camera kind of person. I am much more comfortable being on the other side of the camera and allow other people to be in front of the camera. So this action 2 years ago was a big challenge for me. And I was also new to the idea of live streaming. Still learning, by the way, but I have learned a great deal, mostly through the process I just shared, plus recognizing the wisdom other people have and growing from their wisdom as well. So again, look backwards. What did we experience? What did we learn? What knowledge did we pick up and new understanding did we gain? And what wisdom do we walk away from in the past? But don't camp there, because it is easy to get caught up in pain from the past. And we all have it. And if you say that you never had any pain from the past, I will say this as simply as possible. I know that some may be hurt by this, but you're deceiving yourself if you think you've not had pain in the past. And that, in fact, that can allow you to get stuck in the past with that pain. And if you never deal with it, it's going to create a problem for you moving forward. So looking backwards is very vital. Looking backwards to see what we can glean, see what wisdom we can gain from it, but with the idea that we will move forward with that wisdom, make new choices, wiser choices than what we had made before, with the idea of growing forward. And also in this process, it's important that we don't forget about living in the present. So often, part of our autopilot problem that we miss so much is that even if we're looking backwards and moving forward, we allow that to keep us from living in the present. And that's such a critical mistake. The best wisdom we gain is when we are very present in our world. We're not living in autopilot. We're not also seeking goals that are for other people. We have too many of us that have a basic challenge in that we are seeking to live someone else's vision. We have no vision of our own. And that is such an unwise place to be. And it also creates a challenge for us in that we get caught and we don't learn. So again, the topic for the day is looking backward, no doubt, and learning and gaining wisdom from the past. And then taking that, and while we're in the present, gain wisdom, find new insight, find new understanding. And it doesn't have to be for something brand new. It may be that we grew some in the past and we gained a bit of wisdom, and we have applied that wisdom and it's affected our life in the present. And now things begin to change and we have some additional context for the wisdom we gain. So looking backwards to live forward, but learning to live forward at God's pace, at a pace that is healthier for us, that is better for us, so that we can not only accomplish things moving forward, but we can do them in a way and in a timing that will be healthier for us. Welcome, Lee. Glad to have you with us as always, and appreciate your thoughts and insights. So want to throw out the question for you, all of you, I'm sorry, not just Lee, but anyone that's out there. Is your pace really the pace it needs to be as you're moving forward? Sometimes we get a sense of urgency that something needs to happen immediately. And what we find is that when it doesn't happen immediately, we have anxiety, we have frustration, and even pain. And it may be that we are causing our own anxiety, our own pain, because we're not considering not just what, when, how, where, but at what pace. So again, I hope that we can think in terms of God's speed in our life this year and going forward, and taking the time to allow real change to occur. You know, one of the things that we've talked about in the past on the podcast is that you don't want to always be trying to make quick change or even large change. You know, at this time of year, we talk about turning over a new leaf. And I observe friends and family that turn over a new leaf means they're going to change their life radically. And there are rare moments where that is needed, but many times it's unhealthy to try, and it sets us up for failure. I think we all know that many people set New Year's resolutions every year, and the number that are followed through on is a very small percentage. And I think part of the problem is that we get this inspiration and motivation to have change, and that's good, but we decide to make a radical change and we're not prepared to sustain it. And most resolutions, frankly, are around diet, and happens, And the problem is with most diets is that it requires radical change. They'll have a warm up period or a kickoff period or whatever. If you're going to go for change, again, most of the time, not going to say always, because there are moments where we need to make very radical changes in our life, no doubt about it. But most of the time, we need to consider change, commit to making the change, but doing so in the right way at the right pace. One of the things that Anton and I talk about on Tuesday mornings is 10% change. In other words, small step, because statistically, if we can make a small step and do so consistently over time, ultimately we'll have greater change because we sustain it, rather than making big changes and not sustain it more than a day, a week, a month, whatever, and ultimately it falls by the wayside. So there's value and wisdom in making change in a slow fashion. Lee makes a comment, never understood New Year's resolutions. If it is important, start today. Why wait until the new year or some future point in time? I'm with you, Lee. I understand, though. Some will say, well, this is just kind of a way to mark a point and emphasize change. And I appreciate that, but I'm with you. If it's something we need to change and grow in, yeah, why wait? Be about it. And it would be interesting, and I'll have to confess, I've not explored the history of New Year's resolutions and all. It might be interesting to find out how that got started, when, based on what. And I appreciate also that we, just like with Thanksgiving and birthdays and all, we have times of focusing in on thankfulness and appreciating other people, recognizing their value. But I think more importantly, we need to be doing that on a day-to-day basis and making that a part of our lives. So I'm with you there. So as we look backwards, what can we glean? What wisdom have we gained? And how can we use that wisdom to live in a very present in our lives? Not just going through the motions, not just on autopilot, not just checking boxes, which again, we need to set goals. We need to have plans. We need to have boxes that we can check off. But if that's all our focus, we're missing life. We're missing living in the present. We're missing important parts, and we are missing the opportunity to gain wisdom along the way. And one of the concerns and challenges we face is, as we look forward to live forward, we have a competing concepts. One is the assumption and hope, even desire, that we will have many years to live and that we can look forward with that thought in mind. And that's great. That hope is valuable. But we make a grave error in always hoping for what's down the road, or as Lee was talking about, hoping to make a change later. Well, part of what we need to understand, and that will affect our pace as we consider it, and that is, we're not promised tomorrow. I know statistics, I know probabilities, I know average life span and thing. I get all that, but at the end of the day, we don't have a guarantee of even tomorrow or even the next minute. And when we forget to consider that as part of our going forward, living forward, we lose sight of the present. And it affects the pace at which we go. We in our current cultures are moving at an unbelievable pace, especially in terms of gaining knowledge, data, information input. Most of us live day to day on information overload. We are processing way too much information. Part of that is the blessing and curse of our cell phones. I like my cell phone as much as the next person, but I recognize that it is a source of data overload in our lives. It's a source of distraction, a source that keeps us from living in the present and gaining wisdom and insight as we go along. And so we've got to really think this through, and it will affect the pace at which we go. Welcome, Rosemary. Glad to hear from you always. Thanks for the wishes for the new year. Really hope and wish for you a wonderful new year. For those that don't know Rosemary, Rosemary's been around, I think, close to as long as the podcast has been. And Rosemary's in Australia, so it's very late for her when we start the show. So welcome. Glad to hear from you. Hope you can hang around a bit, but certainly thank you for dropping in to pass along the good wishes. Okay, Rosemary says that it's after midnight Tuesday morning there. Rosemary, maybe you can share with us what we're having to look forward to. If you see something that we need to be aware of, let us know. Maybe we can avoid making unwise choices. So anyway, thank you and wish you well. So we've just got to consider not only gaining wisdom about something, but the pace at which we grow in that wisdom. And I think it's something that really has a profound effect. And it factors into what we talk about with the 10% concept of change, that we want 100% change now, and that's a challenge. In fact, in the past, one of the topics of the Wisdom Seeker podcast was talking about patience. And one of the insights that I've always found fascinating is what is patience. And we think it's a willingness to wait. And I had someone share some wisdom that I found very profound and insightful, is patience isn't just a willingness to wait. Patience, real patience, is a willingness to wait with a good attitude and a grateful attitude. And when we start doing that, that also affects the pace at which we go. Let's see. Lee makes a comment. To me, just the idea of a pastime is sad. Why would anyone want to just pass time? Whittle it away. It ain't coming back. And you're very right, Lee. Pastime is an interesting concept, and I appreciate the spirit of it. But what to me, the fact that we even have a term called pastime and that people seek them out tells me that people aren't living according to their design and their purpose. And there is a disconnect or an incongruence in our lives that causes us to do that. Same way that, and again, a topic we've talked about on Wisdom Seeker Live podcast, is living for the weekends. So many in cultures across the world live for weekends. And it's because of that disconnect. In my mind, we are not congruent. So we are dissatisfied or unhappy with our situation most of the time. So we focus on the weekend, or as you brought up, Lee, pastimes, things to affect our thinking, our life, that are not full of anxiety and stress. So yes, I completely agree with you. Why do we need pastimes? The one resource, the one value that we have is our time, more valuable than, I believe, any other asset or resource we have. And as Lee mentioned, because once it's done, it's spent, it's gone. And rather than looking for pastimes or living for weekends, learn to live wisely so that we don't spend our time, but we invest our time. Invest our time in a way that builds into our life, and just as importantly, builds into the lives of others, our family, our children, our significant others, our spouses, and investing that time rather than spending it. Just such a key, important concept that we can gain wisdom and move forward. But in order to gain that wisdom, we have to look backwards. And some of our look backwards is painful. And for some of us, we let that pain live with us going forward because we never deal with it. Others of us look backwards and see that pain and try to ignore it. And I will here to tell you, it doesn't work. And by the way, and I get in trouble sometimes with things like this, but I'm going to point at us guys. We have a big tendency to think, okay, we'll ignore it. We'll put it in a box and close the lid, and it won't affect us. We don't have to bother with it. Not true. Okay. The things in our lives that we've experienced, including pain, can't just be ignored. I will promise you and guarantee you, based on principle, that if you try to ignore those things, you'll pay a price. And the price may be mental health, it may be physical health, it may be both. It certainly will carry with it consequences of relationship problems. And so don't think that the past is something that you can just ignore. In fact, the thing that we want to do is, as we consider our past, what can we change and move forward with related to our past? That's part of where we begin to gain wisdom. And when we choose to ignore the past because it's too painful, it's not easy, then as the old saying goes, that those that don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And there's a lot of wisdom in that saying and truth to it. Let's see here. Lee has a comment. Says, ask if I'd ever seen the movie City Slickers. Yes, I know the movie. I think I've watched it two or three times. Lee says there's a line where the cowboy asks the city folk why they spend 50 weeks doing what they don't enjoy and have 2 weeks to do something they do enjoy. It is a great question, and I think it's one that we all need to consider and seek wisdom in. I'm of the opinion that the reason we do that is that in our lives we aren't living us. We're not living our design and purpose. We've allowed others to dictate to us what we are going to need to do to be human, to be successful. Or we allow ourselves to be deceived into what success is. We have begun to, or have been for a long time, having success defined for us. And I think that, in fact, one of the things we've talked about on past episodes of Wisdom Seeker Live podcast, what is success? Success, that way we treat success today, is more like reward. What happens after we've really worked hard and gone through a lot to reach an accomplishment is not success. It's a reward. It's a reward for the process, the journey of living by failing, learning, growing, and then having a success. And work from that success and then fail again, learn and grow. It's called adversity. It's called challenges. It's called hurdles. A lot of different names for it, but they're all part of real success. And when we learn what to keep success in mind in the proper perspective, rather than always trying to find the reward, which sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, but the reward is not the answer. It is the process of living along the way, living having learned from the past, and be free to live well in the present and look forward to growing into the future. And when we start doing that, the goal will be less likely that we're going to continue to live in an incongruent fashion, in a fashion of always looking for the pastimes or living for the weekend. And the other key, I do believe, is that not just how, when, who, where that we go forward, but at what pace. And recognizing that the pace that our current cultures are at are not healthy. That's part of the reason that we, Anton and I, started the Human SOS movement, because what we're currently doing is not sustainable. It's not even healthy. And it's certainly not going to lead to the reward that we're looking for. We may gain the reward and lose things of more value, such as our health, such as relationships. So we really need to learn, looking backwards, what did we learn from the past? What can we learn from the past? And what should we learn from the past? And begin to look at that in the present with the idea of how can I gain wisdom in the present based on what I've learned from the past. And then with that wisdom, it will give us hope to look forward into the future and not get stuck. Again, too many people stuck in the past. Even though we have gone through nearly 100 episodes here on the Wisdom Seeker Live podcast, one of the things that I have to make sure for me is I don't get stuck in the past, and that I'm always willing to look forward in light of what I'm currently dealing with. Reminder, gaining wisdom is not an event. It's a process. It's a journey. And it's something that I hope this year, you and I can make it a very big priority in our life, because wisdom, when we gain it, has much greater value than anything that we can gain. Wealth, status, any of that. Because if we have wealth, we have status, we have other things, and we don't have wisdom, ultimately it's likely that those things that we have sought will become harmful to us, because we don't have the wisdom how to handle them, live with them. And so wisdom, I hope, will become a priority in our culture. It's not now. And we've talked about this before, that the process of gaining wisdom is knowledge, and then applied in our experience. And the last step being, how does this affect me? But just as important, how is it affecting others? And when we don't do that, we lose that. And with our culture, we now have third generation or fourth generation built on the idea that knowledge is power. Knowledge isn't power. And I hope I'm not offending anyone by saying this, but knowledge isn't power. Knowledge is knowledge. And the problem is, knowledge without wisdom may also cause us to become very arrogant, very cocky, without any reason to be that way. In fact, some of us will mistake that cockiness for confidence, and it's not. Real confidence is in knowing what we, in gaining our knowledge and understanding and having the wisdom to use it. And part of that wisdom is to help us be content and accepting of who we are and who we're designed to be. And again, these are some things we've covered over the past 2 years. My prayer, my hope is that we've covered them, and that we will not just get stuck with what we have done in the past, but what we can do going forward. So looking backwards to learn, living in the present with what we've learned, and how to find wisdom in the present that will then help us to make better choices to grow into the future. With the understanding, by the way, that our future may be just today. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. So a lot of different perspectives and thoughts as we approach our new year. Resolutions, if that helps you grow and change, I suppose that's fine. But statistically, most resolutions never come to pass. And the most sought after resolution has to do with weight and diet. Encourage you to take wise approach to those topics, and consider that rather than the newest fad, the newest diet that's going to require you to do things that you are not accustomed to, you're not comfortable with, and maybe in a way that you're not designed to behave, but rather really seek wisdom, insight into ourselves to begin to understand how we can change and grow, and do so at a pace that's sustainable. And the way I hope that it will be a reminder for all of us is the hashtag Godspeed in 2023. And I'm hesitant to put a date on it because I think and I believe that we need to focus on God's speed for this day going forward. Because when we gain that insight at the pace at which we need to grow and change and live, we're going to be healthier for it. And I will tell you, our current pace, many times, most times, is not the pace of God's speed. And we see the consequences in our lives. The extreme levels of stress and anxiety, fear, hopelessness. Part of our hopelessness is based in the speed of which we attain things. We don't get it when we want it, and we give up. So, learn from the past. Look backwards. If you choose to ignore the past, pretend like it didn't happen, pretend like it's not a factor in your life, to put it bluntly, you're choosing to be foolish, because the things in our past factor into our lives, including, by the way, our family lineage. If you want to start somewhere to gain insight into yourself, look up a concept called a genogram. It is kind of a genealogy for us, but not physical genealogy. It's a genealogy of our mental, emotional, and spiritual background. Very insightful if you take the time. If you want a spot to start, try that one. But we need to know our past, and we need to address our past in order to move forward, in order not to get stuck, and to be able to live very present currently. Because part of the reason that we're not able to live currently in the present is because we're distracted by our past, either being aware of it or working very hard to not be aware of it, to try ignore it. It's really interesting. If you find yourself running from something or trying to ignore something, your emotional focus is on that something, the very something you think that you're ignoring. Learn from the past. Don't live there. Learn from it. Gain wisdom. And the process of growing from the past is in the present, and living in the present. And one of the best ways to be most present now is to have the wisdom to even grasp and have perspective of the present. One of the things we've talked about is about our use of our words. Past episode related to that. Use of our words. The reason that we have trouble quite often with the use of our words and our communication is we're out of context so often. And the context of the past, context of the present, and even the context of the future. And we gain that context by seeking out wisdom, getting that bigger picture of what's going on in our lives and the lives of those around us, and how they affect us and we affect them. So look backward. Don't ignore it. Don't pretend like it didn't happen. It did. And look for ways to learn and grow from it in the present, so that as we do that, it frees us to be present enough to be ready for what's coming in the future. It's all part of our design, our purpose. And when we can learn to be congruent with it, then we can grow from it. We can experience life in what I like to refer to, and the term comes from the Bible, and that's to live abundantly. When we start living in the present, free from the past because we've learned and let go, and without fear of the future, then we can live in the present in abundant fashion. And I hope that this year, for myself, for all of us, that we can do so at a healthy pace. That is Godspeed in 2023. That we learn to live, learn, grow, be at the pace that we are designed for and is healthy for us. And by the way, that pace is not one pace for everybody. Just like most of life, it's not one size fits all. There are principles in life, certainly core principles that are universal, common, non-negotiables, no doubt. But beyond that, there is such an opportunity for uniqueness, freedom, and to live in that uniqueness and freedom in such a way that it benefits us and it benefits others. So look back to learn, live in the present, and live with hope for the future, whatever that is, whether it's only the next hour, the next day, the next week, or decades. When we start doing that, we will live more wisely, which will cause us to be more contented, have real joy in our lives, and to be living in an abundant fashion. And that's my hope and prayer for all of us in this new year, that we gain wisdom so that we can live in an abundant fashion in the present, free from the past, with the hope of the future. So a little bit of a heavy topic, and I think it kind of fitting with our start of the new year and time of introspection, time of thoughtfulness for the future. I do believe that as we begin to live in a way that is wise, we can have hope. And I am, to be honest with you, I'm more hopeful now than ever of my future. Not that necessarily the circumstances are going to be wonderful all the time, but that I can live in such a way that I live wisely and above the circumstances. And the circumstances are just an opportunity for me to grow and learn. And I pray for you the same, because with that comes a lot of peace and contentment. So I hope as you go forward that you will learn from the past so you can be free from it. Live present every day, not distracted, but rather wise and observant, with the idea that from that context, we can look forward to a better future. And I hope that we will learn to go at a pace that is appropriate for our design and purpose, not swept along with everything and everyone else, caught up in making a living rather than living our life. So, Happy New Year, everyone. We're blessed to have the start of a new year, an opportunity to make choices, grow in wisdom, and have a better new year, 2023, than our past. So I pray that we all seek wisdom, and with that wisdom have a brighter time, present time and future time going forward. Welcome, Weswa. I appreciate you being here. We're Wrapping up right now. Hope you'll join us next Monday for our next episode of Wisdom Seeker Live podcast and become, all of you, wisdom seekers on a daily basis. God bless you. Happy New Year, and even have a blessed week. Join us again next Monday, 8 o'clock on Wisdom Seeker Live podcast here on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye now.